Hi, I'm Giuseppe Luca Montegani. This is my Capstone Project on the Equifax Data Breach. Throughout the presentation, we go through some different points, starting from a company's description, an analysis of the data breach, an analysis of the main issues that contributed to the breach and how the company responded, and how the NIST CSF, the defensive and offensive measures, could have contributed in lowering the impact or to avoid the data breach itself. And then we go through the lessons from the breach itself, what this event actually can other organization. So Equifax is a credit reporting agency founded in 1999, having its headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia, and along with other two companies, Union, it is one of the major credit reporting agencies in the US. This means that the company holds and processes consumer and business information and data, and the company also sells records of consumers and commercial activities to different actors like banks, insurance firms, and so on and so on. Personally identifiable information constitute a strategic asset for the company, so it's absolutely important to guarantee the highest level of security and protection for this. However, as we will see throughout the events, this not actually occurred and the company was not implementing an effective cybersecurity. The 2017 data breach. On September the 8th, 2017, Equifax publicly admitted that the company suffered a major data breach. Unauthorized access took place from mid-May through late July of the same year, and as we can see in the figure, the impact was very, very important for the company, for the population, for the consumer. As we can see, there were some 148 million of US citizens that were affected by the data breach. The data breach affected the personal information of these people, such as names, dates of birth, social security numbers, driver's license numbers. Moreover, around 209,000 credit card numbers were also stolen. The key aspect of the breach is that the company did not promptly notify the consumer about it. That was initially discovered in late July 2017, exactly the 29th of July, putting the consumer in additional danger since the information could have been used in this time frame to perpetrate illegal action, such as opening fraudulent accounts and credit cards, applying for loans, and so on. In addition to this number affecting the US citizens, 8,000 Canadian and around 700,000 British citizens information were also compromised due to the breach. The company at the time was led by Richard Smith as CEO, while the security division was under the control and responsibility of Susan Moulding, that despite having suggested a set of changes to the security policy of the company, by the time the events occurred, none of this reform had been implemented. If we go back to 2017 also, the company performed a security audit showing relevant security deficiencies. Over 8,500 software vulnerabilities were found. The company suffered another breach in 2017 when 430,000 names, addresses, social security number, and other personal information were stolen. And by the time that the data breach in 2017 occurred, these critical deficiencies had not been yet remediated, causing the company to important cyber risk. We can see in the technical analysis of the attack was based on the exploitation of a vulnerability of Apache Struts, which was classified with the highest base score, 10. That means that the criticality of this vulnerability was very, very high, very important, and action should have been taken by the company to remediate to this vulnerability. Actually, Apache provided a patch on March 7, 2017, this vulnerability, and the day after, on March the 8th, the US CERT team informed Equifax issues, and at that, the Global Threats and Vulnerability Management team sent an alert to 400 employees. Also, the Apache Software Foundation directly contacted the Equifax system administrator, directing them to install the patch However, by March the 10th, the hackers managed to breach Equifax network through the online dispute of the company, gaining access to other sections of the network. So they managed to move laterally within the network. And from then, the attackers managed to get access to database with personal and sensitive information. The attackers also installed over 30 web shells, different web addresses, so to be able to keep on operating even if they were discovered. 6 days after receiving the notification about the vulnerability, Equifax scanned its system. However, the scanning did not provide any evidence about the vulnerability to patch struts issues, and the system kept being untouched and unprotected until late July 2017, exposing the company to breach to this cyber risk, as we can see throughout the analysis of the events. But what were the main issues contributing most to the breach? In the first instance, can be stated that there was a complete IT asset inventory. Equifax did not know the location of the patch strat application on their network, while the network scans also failed in detecting the software. The company had a very poor patch management policy, since critical vulnerabilities should have been patched within 48 hours. However, Equifax did not act accordingly to the policy until August 2017. Internal communication, the remediation of security vulnerabilities, was de facto inconsistent, since the employee knowing about the Equifax use of Apache Struts was not included in the distribution list of the vulnerability, nor the employee itself was made aware of the vulnerability. Moreover, the company Equifax did not renew an SSL certificate that was needed to inspect encrypted network traffic. On the contrary, the attackers encrypted the activities, and since the certificate was expired, the incoming traffic was not encrypted. So the company was not fully aware, or was not aware at all of what's going on in its network or the illicit activities on the dispute. So a set of different issues, different aspects that contributed to the breach itself. The company did not provide an effective response to the breach. Actually, the company did not promptly respond to the breach, did not act to inform in a timely manner those affected by the attack, the consumers. It also directed the consumers to a website to check if their data were compromised by submitting the last name and the last digits of their social security number. Also, the company asked the users that were providing their data in this website to flag a box in agreement of Equifax thermal services, including a hidden clause waiving the rights of the user to a class action lawsuit. So, the company was enabled to correctly implement cybersecurity strategy and policy. And as showed by the report drafted by the US Senate, Equifax failed to preserve a complete record of the events surrounding the matter. So the information about the breach itself was incomplete. Also, the company posted via Twitter a fake website to concerned customers, meaning that there was not full attention to the problematic itself, the response was kind of not appropriate if we relate the response to the severity of the breaches. What the company could have done differently. If we take into consideration the NIST CSF, we can see that there are several steps, basis of the 5 different areas on the framework, that could have been implemented to guarantee higher degree of safety for the information, for the infrastructure, and the framework, first instance, in the identify area, provides some useful information about asset management. Asset management is fundamental and a critical aspect to take into consideration. And this includes also inventories of all the physical device and software platform and applications. Moreover, the area also includes mapping the data flow, which was missing Also, resources such as hardware devices, like data, time, personnel, and so on, have been prioritized based on their classification, criticality, and business value. It's also evident that, contrary to the provision of the framework, cybersecurity roles and responsibilities in the company were not fully implemented and were not established. In addition to this, there were major issues with governance about cybersecurity, lacking to effectively establishing and communicating organization cybersecurity. Also, the company was not taking into consideration those that are legal and privacy law requirements. And also, Equifax did not perform a risk management strategy. And from this aspect, it was also very. We move forward about protect that remote access should have been properly managed, including the application of the principles of least privilege and separation of the network integrity was not protected. That means there was a lack of segregation and segmentation, since the attackers managed to laterally move within the network kind of freely. And the access to the databases should have been protected by the application implementation of appropriate IAM and PAM policy and procedure. Moreover, security awareness and training towards the workforce, the employees, and also third parties and stakeholders were not performed. Information and records data were not managed on the basis of the organization risk. Considering that the company was managing and storing huge amount of personal data, an appropriate management is fundamental. Moreover, protection against data leaks were not fully implemented, and there is no evidence that the company had an appropriate backup policy for this information. And also, response plans and recovery plans were not effectively in place and managed by Equifax. In addition to this, protective technology were not in place, so that the audit logs records were not determined, nor they were documented, implemented, and reviewed by the company. Detect. This is the third area of the NIST cybersecurity framework. And as we can see, anomalous activities were not properly detected by the company, contrary to what is prescribed by the framework. Incident alert thresholds were not established. The network was not monitored to detect potential cybersecurity trends. Malicious code was not detected because, as we have seen in the analysis, the attackers managed to install 30 web shells, and these were not detected at all. Vulnerability scans were not properly performed, as we've seen when the company implemented a vulnerability scan. The scan itself did not show the vulnerability, and this means that most probably the software used to perform this vulnerability scan was not properly patched. Roles and responsibilities for the detection were not defined to ensure a proper accountability in case of cybersecurity events, and detection processes were not tested at all, nor they were constantly improved by the company. Moreover, if we move to the response area, the response processes and procedures were not effectively executed and maintained, so to ensure that appropriate response to cybersecurity incidents would have been implemented. Personnel did not know about the roles and order of operation when the response to the breach was needed, and it emerged also a lack of coordination with the relevant stakeholders in the company itself. And although the company understood the impact of the breach, the effectiveness of the response was very limited. While it performed the third party, the forensic of the incident, showing the huge limitation and inaccuracy of the company's cybersecurity strategy and policy. It's also questionable if there was actual cybersecurity policy within the company by the time that these events. The last area of the cybersecurity framework is the recovery area. There is no evidence of an appropriate recovery plan in place at the time when the events occurred. Although, as part of the activities undertaken in the aftermath of the event, the company invested in improving its cybersecurity posture, and since the and properly adopted the framework, the company regularly providing a report about its cyber. This report is, for example, available on their website. It's an annual report showing what it is doing to improve its cybersecurity and measures that. In addition to applying the framework within the organization, several other measures could have been undertaken and could have been taken into consideration, implemented. These are about offensive cybersecurity, and through a proactive and adversarial approach to protect system, networks, and consumer data, so that the company should have implemented actions such as penetration testing of networks, vulnerability scanning, and proper management of the results of the scanning, and application security testing, which was not properly performed because, as we've seen, the attackers managed to get through the online dispute portal being totally unnoticed. Moreover, if we analyze the response to the events, we see that the head of the incident response team did not effectively manage the data breach, since an actual and effective response was not implemented. The company was trying to hide the event, exposing the affected consumers and data of this person to higher level of. The breach should have been made public as soon as its extent was clear, since the delay could have caused additional damage to the consumer affected by the breach. It's also questionable the approach that the company had of opening a dedicated website where consumers should have entered their data to verify if they were affected by the breach. This is because the website was running on a stock installation of WordPress and not providing the necessary enterprise-grade security needed when you collect and you require user to insert their personal data within website. Also, the domain was not under Equifax name, so that the Cisco-owned OpenDNS blocked the access. Hence, the company should have created a more secure, efficient, and reliable website, or anyway, a more secure and efficient system to manage the response and to contact the affected users, while this did not occur. What is data breach can teach? What are the lessons that we can learn from the breach? The organization should have taken into consideration a privacy and security by design approach. This approach is needed when an organization collects, store, and process personal data and sensitive. This was lacking. Anyway, there are also the relevant norms and laws that are applicable to personal and sensitive data. Privacy by design and security by design is also, it is important to develop and implement and test and update on a regular basis defensive cybersecurity strategy and relevant policies. Something very important for all the organization, only if they process or they collect personal data, but all the organization that have digital asset and need to protect them by applying and developing a proper cybersecurity. Moreover, network segregation and segmentation is also an important aspect to take into consideration, because eventually a company, an organization can be subject to a data breach. However, by segregating and segmenting the network, it is possible to block the attackers to move laterally within the network. In addition to this, it's very important to provide regular training to all the employees, stakeholders, to the workforce, to guarantee that if a cybersecurity event, the response team is prepared and the necessary measures are implemented. In addition to the offensive cybersecurity measures are also needed in order to discover vulnerabilities and to act accordingly. The patch management policy should be always implemented and taken into consideration, and patches should be applied when they are available. All the digital assets should be part of an inventory, and other measures are like the implementation of a SIEM system to protect data information. Log monitoring is also a fundamental aspect to verify who accessed the data. The application of the least privilege principle is also needed within the organization. Most probably, the use of data tokenization would have been appropriate for Equifax, so to limit the impact of the breach or to totally prevent it. Certificate management. SSL certificates should be renewed well before they expire. All the legacy systems should be protected. Endpoint and hosts should be monitored. Incident response plan must be drafted, regularly updated, revised, and promptly applied in case a cybersecurity event occurred. And all the policy, process, and procedures must be well defined, so that they have to be clear to all the relevant actors and stakeholders that must be involved when this kind of events take place. And the breach notification procedure must be in place and promptly followed in case of breaches and security events. As we can see, the company failed in providing affected users with proper notification, exposing, as we've seen, them to higher risks. And show us that cybersecurity is a very huge and important matter for all the organization, only if process and they manage personal data. So that all the measures should be carefully implemented, taken into consideration, and this will surely improve the posture of the organization in the era of the digital world. Thank you very much for your attention.